of our Super Readers program, a comprehensive 2-level reading program that can take a non-reader to a grade 3 reading level within 220 lessons. It's an exciting opportunity to teach young kids as young as 4 and above how to read for the very first time. And if you think about it, reading is the doorway to all of learning throughout a person's life. So you are being entrusted with a sacred and very fulfilling responsibility, if you think about it, to actually take a young child, teach them how to read, and that doorway that you're opening will be the doorway for them to learn everything throughout the rest of their life. So very exciting. And the thing about direct instruction, which is what this Super Readers program is based on, is that it's extremely precise and exacting. And given what you're being entrusted to do, it's not surprising that great precision and care is needed, and the training is very comprehensive and reflects that. So it's actually quite simple, but simple sometimes requires enormous clarity, and if anything, that's what direct instruction functions on. It's all about clarity and zero ambiguity, as you will see. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Super Readers right now, but before I do so, I really need to take a step back, abstract ourselves from this discussion, and talk to you about direct instruction, because direct instruction is the pedagogical model on which Super Readers is built. And once you understand the principles of direct instruction, it's sort of like your intellectual compass for the rollout of this whole program. Because once you understand, it's like the first principles in calculus. Once you get this, many of the other questions you will have both now and in the future when you're actually implementing this will dissolve as you consider the first principles of what direct instruction as a pedagogical model and framework and method is really all about. And it is truly extraordinary. So I want to cite this project follow-through, which is the largest, most expensive, most ambitious social experiment ever conducted in the United States, in which 9 different instructional programs representing every major educational theory in existence were pitted against each other to find out what works best with young, at-risk children. And in this largest, most expensive, most ambitious social experiment ever conducted, Engelmann's direct instruction far and away came out on top. Now, what exactly was the purpose of this massive study? The goal was to determine the best way of teaching at-risk children from K through grade 3. Now, the at-risk is particularly important. I want to emphasize and clarify this a little bit. At-risk means, people from disadvantaged backgrounds, impoverished, people who would typically struggle in school because of the socioeconomic realities of their life, and historically prejudiced groups who have been historically prejudiced against, and this methodology is so powerful that even for children like that, it surpassed everything else. And the genesis of direct instruction was actually with gifted students. So prior to this entire project and their participation in this huge study, it was actually being used with gifted kids. So wasn't designed for at-risk kids. It's just that it is so powerful that even with at-risk kids, it performed beyond anything else. So this particular study involved 200,000 kids, 178 communities across America, every race, disadvantaged and advantaged kids. And here were the results. 9 models of teaching K through 3 compared in history's largest educational experiment. And they were measured in 3 different ways: basic academic skills, problem-solving skills, and self-esteem. This one here represents direct instruction. These represent other models. There were in fact 23 total models, but they all fall within the 9 sort of pedagogical frameworks that the study's results were broken down into. But in fact, there were 23 different things in total tested here. This is just simplified. And this line here represents student performance in traditional schools. Anything above this means above what's happening in traditional school. So you see the great irony that direct instruction was so powerful that it won in every category: basic academic skills, problem-solving skills, and self-esteem. And most of the other categories, most of the other pedagogical frameworks actually had negative results, and the few that had any results that were meaningful, it was only in the self-esteem category. And interestingly, direct instruction was very successful in every single category, even though it wasn't set up to deal with self-esteem, etc. But the implications of using this kind of instruction builds self-esteem anyway. So this just shows you the power in the largest study ever conducted. Now, direct instruction was created by Professor Engelman. He's an educator, innovator, and a genius, really, in what he has been able to accomplish, and the results speak for themselves. I mean, his model won out against every other model tested in the largest study ever. And the reason why they call it a social experiment is basically it was an investigation into how you can create social mobility and address some of these historical issues with disadvantaged kids who just perpetuate the cycle of poverty and crime, etc. And his system was so powerful that it could take these at-risk kids and actually catapult them to the point where if you remeasured them, they would be operating at what would be considered a gifted level. Now, as far as I'm concerned, he should be listed amongst the pantheon of great educators, and statues like this should be made of these great educators. This is another thing we recently posted to Facebook. The famous David McCullough, a famous historian and author and biographer, and he was recently quoted as saying we should build statues to our best teachers. And if that were true, and we're in the habit of doing so, absolutely Engelman would deserve to be one of those honored in such a manner. And I will link to you I'll provide a link to you to see a documentary called The Genius of Zig Engelman, so you can see the whole history of direct instruction. So direct instruction is based on a philosophy that it was never the child's fault if she failed to learn. Rather, the instruction was to blame. So just think about the implications of that. It was never the child's fault if she failed to learn. Rather, the instruction was to blame. I mean, how high are you raising the bar in terms of clarity, specificity, exactitude, precision, if you're saying that if there's any fault here, it is never the child? The instruction has to be so perfect that any child can learn, and if they cannot, we have failed. So that gives you some sort of insight into how direct instruction is built. And our whole super reading program is based on direct instruction. The methodology used in the follow-through project that taught those kids how to read, it's the exact same project we are launching as our Super Readers brand, created directly by Professor Engelman. So it's the same system we're talking about, just in a different format, and we've branded it as our own in a licensing agreement with them. The other aspects of direct instruction: zero ambiguity. What I mean by that is, and you'll sense it when you get into these programs, there's just absolute clarity. Normally when terminology is sometimes inconsistently used, or there are these assumptions that the student will understand something and infer something, deduce something, and be able to leap from one particular lesson to another. There's just nothing like that. It's absolutely graduated and systematized so that there are no leaps, and everything is so exact in its precision in terms of the consistency of the vocabulary, the terminology, everything. And the irony is, when you do this right, as he says in that documentary, it becomes invisible. It's sort of like the idea that that when you get something, you reduce something to its essence. It's not even clear what's missing, but that's the whole point. That's its genius. And this is something that has been expressed by many people. Simplicity is brilliance. Einstein said it. You can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. Bruce Lee, simplicity is the key to brilliance. And of course, Steve Jobs, who really puts the hammer on the nail here when he says that simple can be harder than complex. You have to work hard to get your thinking clean to make it simple, but it's worth it in the end, because once you get there, you can move mountains. And I think if that's absolutely the mantra of this direct instructional method. So, as I already said, some of the key characteristics or attributes: explicit, careful, precise, systematic, and total. Explicit in the sense that everything is mapped out in terms of how the procedures for everything, how the teacher talks to the student, exactly how they correct everything, exactly how everything is scripted. It's so precise, and they did many experiments with this where they had this model, they gave it to teachers in the classroom in the initial test before this massive study, where they were just kind of doing pilot tests. And what they found is when they gave it to teachers and they didn't give them explicit instruction and they didn't provide everything exactly the way Professor Engelman himself had rolled it out in his own gifted centers, his own gifted center, the results were not what would have been expected. And it turns out that because teachers are educated in educational theory and have a background and a sort of pedigree, and they understandably want to bring to bear their own insights or teaching techniques, they would take the program and use it in ways that were not exactly what was explicitly called for, and that's what threw off the results. So through that experience, they then again framed it to make it absolutely clear and explicit so that anyone who was using it could reproduce the exact same results. Careful is another very important word, because again, to meet that standard of the child, it's always the instruction's fault, not the child. How careful one must be in terms of how everything is stated and how clear it is, cannot be overstated. In each lesson, only 10% of new material is introduced. Again, part of this very gradual, systematic way of teaching. If placed correctly, a child will answer most of a lesson's material 100% correctly. 70% correctly for the new material introduced, and 90% for, say, the material that was very, very recently introduced in the sequence. So there's this very careful, gradual introduction of material, and always moving the child along toward 100% understanding. And this creates mastery and then fosters self-confidence. And that's exactly why, as you saw in the study results, self-confidence or self-esteem was elevated beyond any of the other programs, even those that were specifically supposed to be self-esteem oriented pedagogical models. And the reason is simple: when a child feels as though they are being fulfilled, that they are accomplishing something, that they are successful, and there's that kind of, the learning is always within their grasp, then their self-esteem rises naturally. And so it's not a surprise that this would happen with kids who are going through a direct instruction program. And everything is small steps and sequential design. This is just to illustrate the whole concept of teaching to mastery, as I've kind of alluded to throughout this. And to give it a kind of prosaic, technical definition, direct instruction is a teaching methodology that provides students with clear instruction at their skill level so they can master content and strategies that allow them to learn at a faster rate than traditional methods. And in light of everything I've just shared with you, that's a vast understatement. But technically that's its definition. So we're going to introduce our own Super Readers program for students 4 and up. It is fully Academy branded. It is completely computer driven, and this is again where this program has evolved, because originally teachers had a very specific script, like literally every single word and sentence they had to say for the entire duration of a lesson was stipulated and was part of the whole package of how you presented it. But thanks to computerization, we now have a program that can do this automatically, because the computer does it and communicates the instructions 100% the way that direct instruction calls for. And the tutor's role will be simply as a facilitator and a guide and someone who corrects students when they respond. And again, this was created by Engelman himself. It's the exact same uh, program that was used with all of these, with that massive study that I cited, except it's just been improved upon and advanced even further. And as I said, the computerized to further reduce any margin for instructional error. Can take a non-reader to beginning third grade reading level in 220 lessons. The program is divided into 2 levels. So you have level 1 and level 2 of super readers. Level 1 is 120 lessons. It will take a non-reader to a second grade reading level. And level 2 is 100 lessons, and it will take a reader from a second grade reading level to a third grade reading level. So it's a 2-level program, so just keep that in mind. Each lesson is 20 minutes of instructional time and 10 minutes of workbook activity time. It teaches all of the skills necessary for children to become successful readers: decoding, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. It is primarily a phonics-based system. Now, phonics has proven to be more effective than look-say / whole word, the look-say whole word method, and even though that method continues to predominate in schools. And the pendulum has swung politically and in education circles between whole word and phonics. Here's what's fascinating. We again posted this to Facebook. It was from Stanford University, and now thanks to brain scans and advances in neurology, we're beginning to understand why it turns out that phonics is better. This particular, I'll just quote from this article, research suggests that phonics is better and leads to stronger readers, and now brain studies reveal why for the first time. Words learned through the letter sound instruction elicited neural activity biased toward the left side of the brain, which encompasses visual and language regions. In contrast, words learned via whole word association showed activity biased toward right hemisphere processing. And the author of the study went on to note that this strong left hemisphere engagement during early word recognition is a hallmark of skilled readers and is characteristically lacking in children and adults who are struggling with reading. So those people who have learned to read through whole word association, and in case there's any confusion about what that means, it just means you basically look at the whole word and you learn how to read it. It's a whole word method. You learn to recognize words as opposed to deconstruct the sounds within them that make up a word. So now we're actually seeing actual brain scan data that reveals why people who learn phonics as early readers end up becoming stronger readers. It's literally in the science of how the brain works, and again, it simply confirms why in that project follow-through direct instruction was more effective than anything else, and why our super readers program will be more effective in the Canadian marketplace. So the thing about this program, again, so systematic and careful, is that it teaches first things first. The first thing you learn is actually sounds, because it turns out, and this is fascinating about the English language, letter names play no direct role in reading words. So this is kind of, as advanced adult readers, one never really thinks about this, but when you start to delve into the intricacies of reading instruction, you realize this. The way you say the letters, the names of the letters, and how one reads sounds are actually not directly connected. It's kind of shocking. We have 26 letters in the alphabet and 44 phonemes. Those are the actual sounds. So let's take an actual example. Let's look at the word mat. M-A-T. So let's say the letter names for mat. If you just say the letter names to try to make the word mat, or read the word mat, the letter names are M, spelled E-M, A, spelled A-Y, and T, which written out would be spelled T-E-E. But do these words or these sounds, do the sounds make up the word mat? You say M-A-T, 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 M-A-T. Even if you say it fast, like you're combining the sounds into a word, M-A-T. They certainly don't sound anything like mat. Now, think about the actual sounds that make it up. If the M is and the A is and the T is at. So if you're saying it slowly, it will be at. And if you were to say it fast, which is how they teach you to do it, they make you make the sounds separately. So at, and then they make you say it fast. All you're doing is taking those sounds and saying them fast. Mat, and that's how you read the word mat. But it's only through an understanding that there are sounds associated with the letters that are not the letter names. And that's vital to a beginner reader, and one of the keys to the solid foundation that this program creates. So let's very interesting property on why English is such a difficult language to learn and to read. If it turns out that the people in Korea and in Finland, who incidentally and perhaps very perhaps revealing that they have the best education systems in the world in terms of average performance of their students, their languages are very different, and they have a direct one-to-one relationship between their letters and sounds. So when they learn to read, it's very easy for the kids to learn to read. Whereas in English, we don't have this direct relationship between letters and sounds. So we have to take a different approach, and this particular method is what works best. And those kids in those countries learn how to read in a very short period of time, whereas on average, kids in the traditional school system take years to actually learn how to read properly, which thankfully the Super Readers program allows them to do that much more rapidly. So if you look at, again, how careful and small step oriented this program is, pretend you're at level 36 here, lesson 36, and you see there's a natural progression. You learn sounds, then you learn words, then you learn stories. So in lesson 36, they would introduce something like the sound, right? And then math. So you learn so 36 you learn, 37 you learn, 38 you're still learning. But then by 39 you suddenly say the word math or that or the. So it's very gradual in how it's introduced. And then 2 lessons later, you finally are reading that and the in stories. So this natural progression that just eases kids into learning the material. It's very impressive. How you introduce it in your sentence: 5 or fewer to 1 tutor. So you're going to have 5 students or fewer to 1 tutor. The configuration will look like a horse shape, like this, a horseshoe shape, sorry, around a PC or a laptop. So you have the teacher or tutor sitting on the one edge, and you're going to have 1 row and sort of 2 rows in a horseshoe shape around the computer. And the teacher, again, will be guiding the lesson and controlling the continue button or repeat button, and making sure that when prompted, the students in unison are actually responding. So I'll show you how the program works so you understand that, but most of it is understandably verbal responses that are prompted by the system. And again, all the instruction is done through the Super Readers program itself. So if we look at each lesson, most of the lessons have 4 main activities. First, the children identify sounds and letter names. That's sort of what I demonstrated to you. Then children identify words. Then they read a story. And then the last part is workbook or line paper activities. So in Super Readers level 1, they have workbooks. They have a workbook, and you'll print out the corresponding activities for each lesson that the students go through, and it's like 100 and I don't know, probably 150, 180 pages of material for all of those lessons for the first 120. And then with line paper activities for Super Readers 2, in Super Readers 2 they have a reader, which is a reading book essentially where they follow along, and then when it comes to the activities they actually complete that on line paper. So they'll just have line paper and then they'll number 1, 2, 3, 4, and they'll complete whatever is asked of them. The actual computerized instruction will present questions and then they have to respond. And the best way for the kids to do this, as recommended by Engelman, is that when you get to the workbook and activity part, the kids sitting in that horseshoe arrangement will simply put the sheet of paper on their chair, so they'll turn the chair the other way and use it as a table while they kneel. And they found that that's most effective, is then the teacher can see all of them at the same time and what they're doing. So anyway, here are screenshots from the program itself. I will give you a quick demonstration soon. So here they're learning sounds for letters and letter combinations. Sorry, so the picture on the left shows the letters children are identifying, and then the picture on the right here is showing the sounds that the children are reviewing. And we can go through a lot of examples. I'll just do it quickly. Children read 3 to 6 lists of words during a lesson. This is from Super Readers level 2. So they're showing 3 to 6 lists of words during each lesson. Here in level 1, this is an example of a story. Children read each story 2 times. There are no pictures for the first reading. Children focus on the words so that they're not distracted by the pictures, and then later on their pictures. So this is an example from Super Readers level 1. Sam may eat a rope. That rope is no rope. It is a tail. And you'll find again that the stories are kind of odd and unexpected. It's part of the humor. But the other point is it forces the children to actually read the words. They can't guess, and that you can't infer and thus not read. You cannot essentially be skipping the reading instruction, because this is an odd sentence. Sam may eat a rope. I mean, it's very odd. One would never think of a sentence like that when you're just starting out reading the first few words. So the kids have to actually be reading each word properly to actually get the story and read successfully through the passage. And then the second version of the story, here it is down here, pictures appear, so it suddenly becomes a bit more entertaining, and they really love this part. And usually again, it's going off the same basic template, but they modify the text a little bit. So once again, the child can't be cheating and not really knowing, they just memorize the words. It alters it. So unless they read each word correctly, they won't be able to guess their way through it. And then normally it's something very humorous, like in this particular case, I may eat that rope, says this bunny, and obviously this is a big bull here. And then it says, that rope is my tail, the bull says to him. So this, for young children, this is absolutely hilarious, and it's always something comedic and entertaining. My son always wants to do the second part over and over again and laughs uncontrollably because it's just so funny. So it might not be funny to an adult, but it's very funny to them. And definitely the highlight of each lesson is the story and the humor to it. So, and that keeps them motivated. And then, as I mentioned, there's the workbook and line paper activity. So in this case, here you're seeing examples of what gets printed. This is lesson 30 here, and this is everything that they have to complete. And then this is from Super Readers level 2, and here you're seeing this will be presented on the screen, and then they will use line paper to actually complete the correct, make the right choice or write out the correct word or whatever the activity calls for. And the story characters, here are some of the characters they will read about. I won't go through all of these. You could pause the video and read if you like, but they're always interesting, zany, crazy, kind of funny stories. And yes, the aesthetic has a kind of hand-drawn, almost like storybook-like quality, and that is intentionally done that way. Because kids are accustomed to reading or having their parents or teachers read these kind of storybooks to them that have this kind of aesthetic. So it's very approachable. So I won't go through all of it now. It's taking too long to go through all the details. But they're just zany stories, and in this particular case, up here, the boy's son is covered in mud, and it's absurd, and all sorts of zaniness. So yeah, there are a lot of different characters that are developed. These are the bragging rats, and there's all sorts of funny stories. They always brag about something, and then whatever they're bragging about, they fail to actually do it. In this case, they're bragging about one particular case. They're bragging about how what incredible swimmers they were, and then the scenario plays out where they end up in the water, and they beg their friends to rescue them because they can't even swim. So again, it's always something funny. So I'm going to give you a quick demonstration of the actual program. As you can see, the aesthetic has a kind of hand-drawn storybook feel to it, and you can see it's actually been branded as our own product. And when it begins, my microphone will be off so that you can actually hear the narrator, and I would like you to just pretend you're the student and respond. So the instruction will play out, and the narrator will be asking you to respond to certain things, and simply pretend you're a child responding to them. And that's exactly what the tutor will be sitting there monitoring and then correcting, and there's a particular procedure for how they correct it that they will be taught, and we have manuals on this. And that's what the tutor will be doing, listening. The group will be responding in unison. There's also a way in which individual terms are integrated, and that's all part of the training manual that we'll provide, and we'll provide instruction on all of this in a different video training lesson. And when they say something like touch the screen, again, this is part of how the horseshoe configuration works, where the kids will rotate and a different child will be actually touching the screen in a way that will not prevent the others from seeing it, and all the other children will be basically visually kind of pointing their finger at the point on the screen that they're supposed to be touching. So they're all participating, and there's a whole system for how that is coordinated. So yeah, so I'll have it play out now, and I'm going to fast forward through a number of different segments so you get a quick sense of it, so it doesn't drag on too much, as though we're actually doing a 20-minute lesson right now, and it'll give you a flavor for what this is like.
Let's start Lesson 10. You're going to tell me the names of all these letters. What letter is this? 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 Good job! It's time for Say It Fast. I'll say words in two parts. You'll say them fast. Listen. E. Say it fast. Yes, me. Listen. Shh. I. Say it fast. Yes, that cat was shy. Listen. I. Say it fast. Yes, my. Listen. S. O. Say it fast. Yes, so. Good saying it fast. You're going to tell me the names of these letters. What letter? What letter? What letter? In some words, the letter O says its name. It makes the sound O. What sound? The next letter is A. Touch it. In some words, A says its name. So what sound does it make? Yes, A. The last letter is E. Touch it. In some words, E says its name. So what sound does it make? Yes, E. Now you're going to say words apart at a time. The first word is see. What word? My turn to say see apart at a time. Listen. S, E. Your turn. Say see apart at a time. Get ready. What word? My turn to say am apart at a time. Listen. A, Your turn. Say am apart at a time. Get ready. My turn to say so apart at a time. Listen. S, O. Your turn. Say so apart at a time. Get ready. Time to follow the arrow. Touch the ball of the arrow. There are 3 pictures. You're going to do what the picture shows. Touch the mark for the first picture. Get ready. Do what the picture shows. Touch the next mark. Get ready. Do what the picture shows. Touch the last mark. Get ready. Do what the picture shows. See if you can do all 3 things the pictures show. Here are the 3 things you'll do. Your turn to do those 3 things. Get ready. Get ready. Get ready. Again, do all 3 things. Get ready. Get ready. Get ready. Did you get them all right? Now we'll do sounds that letters make. Each of these letters makes the sound you hear at the end of the letter name. First, you'll tell me the letter names. What letter? What letter? What letter? What letter? Get. Yes, R makes the sound R. S. Next sound N. Yes, F makes the sound F. Good work. Here's something new. You're going to read words. This is a word. Words are made up of letters. To read words, you say the sound for each letter. Then you say it fast. Once more. You say the sounds, then you say it fast. What do you do first? Then what do you do? The first letter in this word is N. The sound for that letter is N. The next letter in this word is O. The sound for that letter is O. Your turn. What's the sound for this letter? Yes, N. What's the sound for this letter? Yes, O. This time I'll say sounds. You'll touch the marks under the letters. Listen and touch. Get ready. N. O. N. O. Listen and touch again. Get ready. N. O. Your turn to touch and say both those sounds. Get ready. Say it fast. You just read the word no. Good for you. The next letter is E. The sound for that letter is E. Yes, This time I'll say sounds. You'll touch the marks under the letters when I say the sounds. Listen and touch. Get ready. E. 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 You just read the word me. You just read the word me. Good for you. How can you learn to read words so fast? Story time. I'm going to tell you more about Sam the bunny. When we left Sam, he was trying to help a little ow, s. What word? Here's the picture. Who's in this picture? Why is the mouse carrying all that stuff? But when all the stuff was on Sam's back, he could not ooh, v. Listen again. Ooh, v. What word? Yes, with all that stuff on Sam's back, he could not move. Who's more tired in the picture? Why? Who did all the... What's happening in the... Here's Sam near the end of the day. We'll finish the story next time. Now you're going to do some things in your workbook. Find the page for Lesson 10. You can see a picture of Sam and the mouse. Somebody forgot to show the loads they're carrying, and you'll color the picture. Here's the first row of dotted letters you'll write. What letter are you going to write? The R is made up of a line that goes straight down and part of a hump. Here's the line. Here's the part of a hump. Here's how to make a letter R. You start at the big dot and make the line down. Watch. Now you make part of a hump. Watch. Once more. Make the line down, then make part of a hump. Your turn. Touch the first dotted R on your worksheet. Then make part complete.
So your immediate question, or one of the immediate questions, is going to be placement tests to group students by ability. How does this work? What do we do? It's very similar to the assessments and evaluations we have. Basically, they're going to be placed based on their ability level. And again, the system is so careful and systematic, so they provide all the tools. So basically, for a child to begin the program, they have to know the following 5 letters: F, M, R, E, and O. So this is the first sort of screening to make sure the student is ready to participate. And if they don't know these 4 letters, it's not a problem. They have 2 things. They have something called the alphabet game, and then it's just a lesson. But basically, you as the Learning Center owner and administrator of this would just do a quick test. There's a test that's computer driven, and it's like an activity, and it's funny, and they put the letters in a toaster and they shoot out of the toaster. And if the child can identify all of these letters correctly, then they're ready to participate in the beginning of the program. So it'll be lesson 1 of Super Readers level 1. And if they cannot, then it's not a problem. There are 2 games. There's an alphabet game, and then there's just something called a lesson. And in essence, you will just present these 2 to the child, set up in a private session to do this, and then you just teach them these 5 lessons, these 5 letters. As soon as they know them, they're ready to participate in the program. Now, if the child already has some skills, some reading skills through their school or through their parents, then there are passages. So this particular passage: I see a man fly, I eat a meal, my feet feel sore. So again, everything is prescriptive. If there are 3 to 5, if they make 3 to 5 errors in this passage, then they can actually start on lesson 40. If they make more than that, then they cannot. Then they have to go to lesson 1. If here's another passage, so a little bit more advanced. If they make 3 to 5 errors in here, then they can start at lesson 60. And here is an even larger passage. If they make 4 to 8 errors, then they can start at lesson 80. And here, even more complicated passage. If they make between 5 and 20 mistakes, again, these are all on the sheets that you will have, and you would actually pull this out, and it will just be this small little sheet. I've just put it all together here as part of the manual to present it to you. But it's just the same as doing an assessment, and then you would mark off where they made errors and count them up, and then if they fall within the right category, then they get to start on the lesson number shown here, and if they don't, then they go to the one before that, and you would move backwards until you find their skill level and where they should place in the program. And depending on where they place, they have very specific exercises. So if you're going to start at lesson 40, there are what they call critical exercises or transitional exercises that are from lessons before any of these numbers. And these numbers, they will list specific lessons they must do. They're usually just parts of other lessons, pre-40, pre-60, pre-80, pre-100, and it just gives the child some of the tools in terms of how letters are presented and how the program works, so that they can understand what they're going to see at lesson 40. So and beyond that, so this would place them in Super Readers level 2, and again, same process. They have to read a passage. Depending on how many errors they make, they can start at lesson 1 of Super Readers 2. Same thing here. Depending on how many errors, they can start at 30, and depending on how many errors they make in this passage, they can start at 57. And in all of these cases, they once again have a set of lessons that you give them. That give them some of the basic tools and understanding of the project program in order to actually continue from these lessons. They're short. It would just be a private lesson for one session, basically, for them to quickly learn the basics, and then they would integrate with the group that they've been assigned to. Okay. So who is the ideal Super Readers tutor? The ideal tutor would probably be an ECE diplomaed tutor, but in fact it could be any smart tutor with excellent English. I mean, this program was designed to be fully prescriptive. It's driven by the computer, so in essence, if you're anyone who is well educated and has strong command of English, and you can basically follow the system, you could tutor. But ideally it would be ECE diploma, or just a smart tutor you might already have who has excellent English. But that's just the basic part of it. The more important part beyond that is whether they have experience with young kids, and they have an understanding of the psychology and tendencies of young kids, and the need for just tremendous patience, and an ability to build rapport and make lessons fun, comedic, and entertaining. Energy and enthusiasm really matter with young kids. And the thing is, they have to, when I say understanding the psychology and tendencies of young kids,